Okay, let's begin. In this video, I'm gonna talk about interaction in second language acquisition. So let's begin. Okay, what is interaction? Do you know this word, interaction? So to interact with somebody means to act together or cooperatively, especially so as to communicate with each other. So this is given by Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary. So when we say interaction, there should be two or more people, and those two or more people are acting together. So when there is interaction, there are two or more people acting together or cooperatively. And if there is no interaction, maybe there is only one person. And even if there are two people and they are not acting together, they are acting independently. So in that case, there is no interaction. Okay? So this is the general definition of the word interaction. So what does interaction mean during language use? So interaction is closely related to this word input. So I think you are listening to me on YouTube and you are having input, but actually there is no interaction involved in that because I'm not with you. I am trying to make my speech comprehensible to you. So I am kind of adjusting my speech. I am guessing your level of English, and I'm also speaking slowly, and I sometimes repeat things. So I am adjusting, I am modifying my speech, but I am not interacting with you. You're just listening to me, and I am not getting responses or reactions from you. So we are not interacting. So you are having input, and that's it. But if you are with someone, and if you are talking with that person, you are having interaction, and you are also, of course, you are having input. Let's say let's say this is you, and you're talking with this lady, and you're getting input from her, but also you are interacting with her. So she's speaking and you're speaking, and she's listening to you, and she's maybe she can modify her speech based on your reaction, based on what you say. So you're having interaction. You're having both input and interaction. And of course you are producing speech, so you are also outputting as well. Okay. And many researchers believe that interaction facilitates, it helps second language acquisition. So first, interaction leads to modified input. So so let's say you're listening to English on your smartphone, or you're listening to okay, so you're watching my video and I cannot interactionally modify my output because I am not interacting with you. I am not getting any response from you. So you are not having interactionally modified input. But if you do, you can get more comprehensible input that is more comprehensible than unmodified or pre-modified input. So maybe I am giving you pre-modified input because I'm speaking a little slowly, but the input that I'm giving you is not interactionally modified because we are not having interaction. I'm not getting responses or reactions from you. So if there is interaction, you can get interactionally modified input, and that is in many cases more comprehensible than unmodified or pre-modified input. And comprehensible input is good. And second, interaction leads to modified output. So let's say this is you, and you are talking with this lady, and so she's listening to you, and if she doesn't comprehend your output, so you say something, but she doesn't understand it, she doesn't comprehend it, and in that case you are pushed to modify your output and make it more linguistically accurate. Okay, so when there is interaction, this kind of thing can happen to you, and if you try to modify your output, and if you try to make it more linguistically accurate, then your second language acquisition is promoted. And also, if you say something and if you say it in the wrong way, the listener may tell you a more accurate way of expressing the same thing. So you say something in the wrong way, and she gives you the correct way of saying that. And then you can learn from it and modify your output. So in this case, interaction results in the facilitation of second language acquisition. So interaction is helpful for your second language acquisition. So this is what many researchers believe. And let me talk a little about negotiation of meaning. So one critical part of interaction that triggers modified input, modified output, and other adjustments is negotiation of meaning. So this is a very important part of interaction. So what is negotiation of meaning? So it is an attempt to reach mutual understanding between speakers after a communication breakdown, which is, for example, caused by incomprehensible speech by someone. So let's say you say something and she doesn't comprehend it. Then there is a communication breakdown, communication problem. So you have a communication breakdown, and then you try to understand each other. Okay? So you make efforts to understand each other. And that process is called negotiation of meaning. So you try to reach mutual understanding. And these are strategies for negotiation of meaning. So for example, speaker 1 says, I went to Kyoto yesterday, and speaker 2 says, what? So speaker 2 just doesn't comprehend this utterance. So speaker 2 requests a clarification from speaker 1. And another example would be something like, I went to Kyoto yesterday. You went to Kyoto? So here speaker 2 is trying to confirm his or her understanding. in this last example, speaker 1 says, I go to Kyoto yesterday. Of course, here we have a mistake. We have an error. And speaker 2 says, you went to Kyoto. So this utterance involves a correction. But speaker 2 didn't change the meaning of the message. So speaker 2 says the same thing in a more accurate way. So this is called a recast. We will come back to this later, so please keep this in mind. So this is very important, recast. And this is another type of negotiation, negotiation of form. So here we had communication problems. But when we say negotiation of form, we don't really have communication problems. So even if there is no problem comprehending each other, another kind of negotiation may take place if there is a linguistic problem. So here the problem is purely linguistic. The problem is not the problem is not in communication itself. So communication is okay in this case. So negotiation of form is an attempt to find the correct linguistic form during a conversation, even when there is no comprehension problem. So for example, a student says, I belong the tennis club, and the teacher says, you belong to the tennis club, and the student corrects this initial sentence and says, I belong to the tennis club. Okay, so actually the teacher has no problem understanding the student's utterance. So the problem is purely linguistic. The problem is with this linguistic form. But of course, this is not often used by native speakers who are not teachers. So, you know, whether there is a mistake like this or not, it's not so important when we communicate. So most native speakers don't really care, even if we say something like this. So they will not, in many cases, they will not correct us, even if we say this. Okay. Okay, now we are more or less ready to talk about the interaction hypothesis. And there are actually two versions of this hypothesis. So the original version is proposed by, but actually both versions were proposed by the same researcher, and the original version was proposed in the early 80s by this researcher called Long. So according to this hypothesis, the original version of the interaction hypothesis, negotiation of meaning helps second language acquisition by making input more comprehensible. So what is important in this hypothesis is comprehensible input. So as I told you, if we have input, we can interactionally modify, we can provide interactionally modified input to the learner, and interactionally modified input is more comprehensible than unmodified or pre-modified input. Okay. So this is the original version of the interaction hypothesis. And the revised version of the interaction hypothesis says, this is a little difficult. Negotiation of meaning, and especially negotiation work that triggers interactional adjustments by the native speaker or more competent interlocutor, facilitates acquisition because it connects input, internal learner capacities, particularly selective attention, and output in productive ways. Oh, this is very complicated. But please notice that we're not talking about only comprehensible input. For example, here we have output as well. So let me explain this in more detail. So I'll give you an example. So let's say one learner says this: I go to Tokyo yesterday. So the intended meaning is I went to Tokyo yesterday. So there is a mistake, there is an error here. And the teacher says, you went to Tokyo yesterday. You went to Tokyo yesterday? And so in the teacher's utterance, we have the correct form, went. And the listener notices that something has changed. So did I say listener? Oh, I should have said learner. So the learner notices that something has changed. In his or her original utterance, we had go, but in the teacher's utterance, we have went. And the learner compare go and went, so these two forms, and this leads to the noticing of the gap. So the gap between the learner's English and the teacher's English. So there is a gap, obviously. And it is important to notice the gap for second language acquisition to take place. And this teacher's utterance is called corrective feedback or CF, because this part corrects the learner's mistake. Okay? And the learner may say, yes, I went to Tokyo yesterday. So look at this part. So the learner modified his or her original utterance and said went instead of go. Okay? So this learner interactionally modified output. So the interaction hypothesis says the learner can acquire second language like this. And let me give you another example. So this is based on my own experience. Yes, this I experienced this when I was in the UK. So I was in a bank. Okay, a bank is a place where you get money and where you save money. So I said to a bank clerk, I talked to that woman over there. Okay. When I said this sentence, I thought this sentence was correct. And the bank clerk said, okay, you talked that lady. You talked that lady over there. And? Okay, this is what the bank clerk said. And then I noticed something. I said, I talked to that woman over there. this is my original sentence, but the bank clerk said, okay, you talked to that lady over there. And so I noticed that there is difference, and I thought, why did the bank clerk say lady instead of woman? So I compared these two words, and I noticed that maybe I should have said lady instead of woman. I noticed that maybe it is not polite to say woman. So actually, this bank clerk, she gave me corrective feedback. Okay. So she, in a sense, she corrected my sentence. But of course, she didn't explicitly say so. And because I realized that I should have used lady, I said, and the lady said to me that I don't remember this part, but I modified my own output. So I interactionally modified my own output based on the bank clerk's corrective feedback. And here, my attention was drawn to linguistic form, although we were communicating to comprehend each other. So this point is quite important. So we were just trying to understand each other, but briefly, only briefly, my attention was drawn to these linguistic forms. Okay, and I noticed that my initial sentence had a problem. And here, this example is related to this very important concept, focus on form. This is sometimes abbreviated as F on F. So what is focus on form? Focus on form is attention to linguistic form that occurs when speakers are primarily focusing on meaning. Does this make any sense to you? Here in this example, me and the bank clerk were just trying to understand each other. Okay, so we were focusing on meaning, and only on meaning initially, but at this moment, and only at this moment, when she said this word, my attention was drawn to this linguistic form, although the primary focus was on meaning. So, and there are teaching methods or styles of teaching that are based on focus on form. So, focus on form style of teaching draws learners' attention to linguistic form while keeping the primary focus on meaning. Okay? So the primary focus is always on meaning, but there are moments when the learner's attention was drawn to linguistic form. And focus on form contrasts with focus on forms. So we have, in this case, we have S here, focus on forms. So focus on forms style of teaching is a traditional grammar focus style. in which the primary focus is on form, is on linguistic form, not on meaning. Okay? But when we say focus on form, the primary focus is on meaning. When we say focus on forms, the primary focus is on form from the beginning till the end. And we have a third type. When we say focus on meaning, it means that the focus is always on meaning. So focus on meaning style of teaching focuses just on meaning without paying attention to grammar or form at all. So on this continuum, we have focus on forms at this end, and we have focus on meaning at this end, and we have focus on form closer to focus on meaning. So the primary focus is on meaning, but sometimes the learner's attention is drawn to form. Okay. And when we interact with each other, usually our primary focus is on meaning. So when we talk, when we interact with each other, we try to understand each other. Okay? So our primary focus is on meaning. Then how can we achieve focus on form? We can achieve focus on form by providing corrective feedback effectively. So in our interaction, we can do this. We can provide corrective feedback. Just like this bank clerk did. So we are having a conversation, we are trying to understand each other, but she provided me with corrective feedback. And at this moment, focus on form was achieved briefly. And if we do this, we can promote second language acquisition. That's exactly what happened to me. So I noticed that there was something wrong with the way I said this, and I could modify my sentence. Okay. I had the same example here. I didn't go back to. I didn't go back there. So yes. So this is an example of corrective feedback. And actually, there are many types of corrective feedback or corrective feedback strategies. So, for example, we have metalinguistic feedback, we have repetition, clarification request or confirmation check. And I cannot talk about each of these in detail, but let me talk about this one, explicit correction. This is one type of corrective feedback. So what is it? It is explicitly saying that the learner's utterance is wrong and telling him or her a correct way of saying it. So for example, if the learner says, I talked to that woman over there, the native speaker who the learner is talking with, this native speaker can say, you shouldn't say woman, that's impolite. You should say lady instead. So you talk to that lady, and okay, here, isn't it very explicit? So the bank clerk that I talked with, she said something like, okay, you talk to that lady, and But in this case, this native speaker says you shouldn't say woman. That's impolite. You should say lady. So this native speaker is explicitly saying that there is something wrong with this utterance. And also this native speaker provided a better way or more appropriate way of saying the same thing, which is this. So this is an example of explicit correction. And please compare it with this. This is called recast. So recast is expressing the same message in a linguistically more appropriate way without explicitly saying that there is something wrong. So so this is my example. I talked to that woman over there, I said, and then the bank clerk said, okay, you talk to that lady. And so this bank clerk didn't make it explicit that I said something wrong. She didn't say so. But instead, the bank clerk just gave me a more appropriate way of saying the same thing. Okay? And with recast, we can achieve focus on form without disturbing the flow of communication. So the flow of communication between me and the bank clerk was not disturbed at all. But what about this case? The flow of communication was disturbed. Okay? So this part, you shouldn't say woman. That's implied. You should say lady. This part is not really for communication. However, there is a possibility that the learner may not notice the modification. So here, this part has been modified, but the learner may not notice this modification because in this case it's not explicit that the modification has been made. So the learner may not notice the modification at all. And if the modification is not noticed, then second language acquisition will not take place. Okay. And this one, this is another example of corrective feedback. This is called elicitation. Okay, what is it? It's eliciting a more accurate utterance from the learner by repeating part of the initial utterance and stopping just before the error. So if the learner says, yesterday I go to Tokyo, the teacher stops here. Yesterday you? The teacher stops here, and then the learner remembers that he or she should have used the past tense form. So the learner says, yesterday I went to Tokyo. So this corrective feedback strategy is called elicitation. So here we elicit a correct or more accurate or more appropriate form from the learner. Okay? And if we use this, we can draw the learner's attention more clearly and push them to modify their output. However, this is possible only if the learners know the correct form. So if they don't know the correct form, they can't say they can't say this. So in this case, the correct form is went. But if they don't know this form, they can't say it. The teacher doesn't say it. So they have to know this form from the beginning. And is there any evidence? Yes, there is evidence. There are effects of interaction, good effects, of course, on second language acquisition. So interaction does facilitate second language acquisition. And actually, interaction has larger effects on vocabulary than grammar. And also, it has larger effects in one-to-one interaction than in one-to-many interaction, as in a classroom. And interaction has larger effects in instructed second language acquisition than in naturalistic second language acquisition. And also, corrective feedback does facilitate second language acquisition. Here. And this study also found many effects that are similar to these. So there is evidence that interaction helps second language acquisition, and also corrective feedback helps second language acquisition. There is evidence. So what should we do? So teachers should have as much interaction with the learners as possible, because interaction is good. Interaction is helpful. Interaction helps second language acquisition. So we should have as much interaction as possible. And also teachers should give the learners interactionally modified input. So we have to see the learners' reactions, and we have to interactionally modify our input so that we can give the learners interactionally modified input. And also, teachers should engage in negotiation of meaning or form with the learners. This also helps. And during interaction, teachers should achieve focus on form by providing an appropriate type of corrective feedback. We have to choose an appropriate type of corrective feedback, because different types of corrective feedback, such as recast and elicitation, they have different strengths and weakness. So we should choose an appropriate type of corrective feedback. And by doing so, teachers should push the learners to modify their output. So the learners should be pushed to modify their output. And then second language acquisition will take place, or at least that will facilitate second language acquisition. And what should learners do? Learners should have, it's the same thing. Learners should have as much interaction with the teacher and other learners as possible, because interaction is good. It is helpful. And learners should try to obtain interactionally modified input from the teacher or native speaker. So if they don't understand, they should say they don't understand. They should show it. They should not pretend that they are understanding. And learners should have negotiation of meaning or form with the teacher, native speaker, and other learners, because this also helps second language acquisition. And learners should take advantage of corrective feedback if it is provided, and they should have focus on form. They should focus on form when a chance arises during a conversation. Okay, so just like I did. And when they are pushed learners should try to modify their output without giving up. Okay, they have to make efforts and try to modify their output. Whew. These are the references. Thanks for listening.